Good afternoon. Good evening. Nice to have you join us for our town council meeting. This is Monday, May the 13th. You are in our council chambers. Please, if you have a phone, turn it off. We would like to give you our undivided attention. Phones that ring, buzz, vibrate, crawl on the floor, those are distracting. We do have a full house tonight. Happy to see you all. There are rules of deportment within our council chambers that we must adhere to, and everyone else does too. So with that, we will rise, our council will, for Pledge of Allegiance, and then the invocation will be given by Councilman Moody, and we'll start our meeting. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Let us pray. Dear God, thank you for allowing us to gather here today to do the business of the town of Fort Mill, South Carolina. Lord, just be with us and bless this time. In your name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. All right, council members, you have the minutes to the April 8th, 2019 council meeting. Do you have any changes, any additions, or any deletions? Hearing none, do I have a
I'll make a
motion?
motion to accept the minutes.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to accept the minutes as are provided this evening. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Thank you so much. Public comment. Pursuant to Section 2-46 of the Code of Ordinances for the Town of Fort Mill, any resident may appear before council for the purpose of providing public comments on any municipal matter except personnel matters. Those who wish to speak must sign the public comment sheet prior to the start of the meeting. I'm assuming we have some public comment sheets.
Yes, ma'am.
We have 5 folks signed in to speak. Everyone is provided 3 minutes of presentation time. So we look forward to that. The first one I'm going to call is Rick Hayes. Rick, would you please state your address, your name, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Yes, my name is Rick Hayes, 1666 Callahan Road in Fort Mill. I'm here on behalf of nearly 700 community members who signed this petition within 48 hours to demand a stop to the development of a 7-Eleven and self-storage facility. The concerns about the plans for the commercial space next to the elementary school are the development of a gas station and self-storage right beside the school, and their irresponsibility to the safety of our children. There's health concerns, environmental damage, sight, sound, odor pollution, traffic flow, congestion, crime, pedestrian safety, and traffic accidents. Real estate value is going to decrease, plus the sale of cigarettes and alcohol just in the back schoolyard. The zoning for this commercial space was decided way back in 2008. The space sat undeveloped for just over 10 years. In the meantime, an elementary school was placed right next to the undeveloped lot and the residential areas started booming. New residents were hopeful of retail shops such as clothing boutiques, ice cream shops, restaurants, coffee shops, etc., similar to retail in Baxter. During the process of creating Dobie Bridge Elementary, built in 2014, the Fort Mill Zoning Committee should have reassessed the retail space and set parameters on what type of businesses could go in the development. The U.S. EPA school siting guidelines recommend that districts periodically inspect existing schools for potential environmental health and safety risks. Health concerns: cancer. Gasoline vapors contain a number of toxic chemicals, notably benzene, a carcinogen. Gas stations emit 10 times more benzene than originally thought, and people can be exposed to the chemical beyond the setback of 300 feet. These regulations are outdated, and they go much further than that in articles. Just to move on in time, polluting our...
You still have a minute and 25.
Okay, polluting our community. I've got an image here, but you can see it on your notes. So trash collected on the corner of a 7-Eleven in a neighborhood community. All of the trash has the potential to blow in our school's playground as well as our yards. This trash was collected in just an hour of time with a lot more trash to collect, but no time from the volunteers. Got gasoline, accident spills. Research shows 5 to 7 gallons of gas evaporate from the pump a day. Vehicles produce carbon monoxide. Types of establishments are prone to crime. Gas stations in a little over 1 month on a QT on Highway 21 experienced 6 different types of criminal activity, and more than 50% of shoplifting crimes also take place at such establishments. A new trend of crime taking place at a gas station started targeting women with SUVs called sliding. As the women get out of the car, they slide in and take their valuables. Self-storage units. Through the years, officers have found all sorts of criminal activity lurking in unassuming storage units: drugs, counterfeit goods, stolen property, terroristic bombs, illegal activities, human trafficking. Charlotte is number 8 ranked in the nation for that kind of stuff. With all that said, it's shocking with all the effort Fort Mill has put into creating its amazing award-winning school district, which has attracted people from across the country, to potentially tarnish the reputation by allowing a gas station and self-storage right next to the elementary school. Please make a movement to require a more appropriate retail space next door to the elementary school. MPV has done an amazing job creating retail areas such as Redstone. I'm confident they could use the blank slate they just created to create an amazing space for our community to enjoy.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm out of time.
No, it's okay.
Had much more to say.
That's all right. That's okey-doke. Thank you. Bill Mosley.
Mayor, I'm sorry, I thought I was signing up for the second reading of the Springfield Parkway.
Okay,
So
I'll
I
put you on
apologize.
reserve. Would you like to speak now, or you want to
Not-
wait? Okay.
I just was here to answer any questions on that, but not
Okey-doke.
to speak.
All right, thank you.
My apologies.
That's okay. Is this Barry
Drucker.
Drucker? I'm sorry.
That's all right. You're lucky to have read what you did already.
Hey,
So thanks
vision
for,
is going.
thanks for allowing me to speak to the city council. I have an opposition to the development of the NPV property at Doby's Bridge Road and the Fort Mill Parkway. I don't find there's a lot of logic in allowing a gas station with thousands of gallons of gasoline to be sitting right next to a school. When we all know that a lot of young families move here in order to provide a good education for their children. I also have an objection to the huge amount of traffic that this type of establishment will create. We just have a high school that's opening, what, a half mile from this property? And we're going to dump all that traffic onto Fort Mill Parkway, and at the same time have a convenience store which feeds on high-frequency purchases. I think it's very unwise. So I'm hoping that you folks will reconsider in some fashion. I have some citations, some research and citations that I'd like to read to you, if you don't mind.
Sure.
A 2015 study by the American Journal of Public Health indicates that the availability of convenience store increases coronary heart disease in young adults, and that's because of the amount of junk that they sell at these places. Journal of Epidemiology, and Community Health, citation 2004, neighborhood convenience stores increase individual level of smoking because of the easy access to packs of cigarettes sitting right there on the counter. Buffalo Rising, which is a local, website based in Buffalo, New York, a 2018 publication indicates that convenience stores such as Rite Aid and 7-Eleven increases trash accumulation in the area. A 2011 study by New Haven Independence, that's a newspaper, 24-hour storage, 24-hour convenience stores tend to attract late-night gatherers and violence and loitering. 2013 Berkeley side study, 7-Eleven is a magnet for antisocial behavior. Journal of Public Health, 2011, 75% of students visited a convenience store at least once a week. These stores advertise tobacco products and unhealthy snacks, thus increasing the likelihood of obesity and health issues in our children. So with that, I would ask you again to please reconsider forcing this developer to find some other way of making money from this property. Maybe a Starbucks. How about that? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Scott Stevens?
Hey, thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm also discussing the same as Rick and Barry. I'm just going to read from some notes
Where
that
do
I
you
took. I live in Massey.
Thank you.
A report by the U.S. Department of Justice stated convenience store robberies account for nearly 6% of robberies in the United States. In 2018, 2 York County convenience stores were robbed in unrelated incidents by men wearing masks and holding handguns. There will soon be a convenience store located directly beside Doby's Bridge Elementary School. A 2018 study found that benzene emissions from underground gasoline storage tanks were high enough to constitute a health concern at a distance of 518 feet. The adverse effects of benzene include cancer, anemia, and low birth weight. Further, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency noted their concerns about health risks associated with fueling emissions in close proximity to schools. They recommended schools within 1,000 feet of gas stations be screened for potential health risks. There will soon be a gas station located directly beside Doby's Bridge Elementary School. In 2017, the DEA seized 50 kilos of the chemical used to produce fentanyl from a self-storage facility. The amount seized could have produced 19 million tablets with a street value of $570 million. This occurred in the town of Northborough, Massachusetts, a town that I moved from. According to a popular crime statistic website, the town of Northborough is safer than 64% of U.S. cities. The town of Fort Mill is safer than only 35% of U.S. cities. Although the town of Northborough did not abut Charlotte like Fort Mill does, certainly if that crime can occur in Northborough, it can happen in Charlotte. There will soon be a storage facility directly beside the Doby's Bridge Elementary School. I'll just close with this. In just 48 hours, nearly 700 residents of Massey and South Doby's Bridge surrounding communities have stated they strongly oppose a convenience store, gas station, and self-storage facility being built next to our elementary school and our neighborhoods. If God forbid a crime occurs at this location that impacts the children of the school, or in 10 years from now, if there's a study that shows children who attended Doby's Bridge Elementary have a higher rate of cancer than their Fort Mill peers, certainly the town's negligence to prevent these facilities from being directly built beside Doby's Bridge Elementary School will share the blame. We're just asking that we know it's late in the game. Unfortunately, for some reason, the residents were not given ample notice, or maybe just how the system works. We weren't aware until recently that this is what's going there. The residents are okay with facilities being put there. We're not okay with a gas station and a storage facility being put there. If there's anything the town can do at all, whether it's power or persuasion tactics to prevent these particular facilities from being put there, and working with MPV, that's really what we're asking. Thank you.
Thank you. All righty, and last, Mark Kerr.
Excuse me. I'm Mark Kerr. I'm at 102 West Gregg Street. As a lot of people know, White Park is a drag strip. The speed limit at the very beginning of the neighborhood is posted at 20. On a daily basis, you can find a number of vehicles going 40, even sometimes what you would guess at 60, but if you can't tell because it's a blue, black, white blur just speeding past your house. The speeding has gotten, I feel, extremely more, it's grown in the past year that I've lived here. We've been here 3 years, in Whiteville Park 1 year. We've had plenty of close calls, whether I'm in my yard on the side mowing the lawn, and a car will come within a couple feet, speeding past. I've watched the same neighbor twice get nearly ran off the road while she was walking in the gutter. We've had a couple of close calls with our daughter walking with us near the street. And I've brought this up. Other neighbors have brought this up. I've had productive conversations with Sergeant Harold, with Mr. Broom. I even exchanged an email too with Mr. Huntley about this, and he's persuaded me to come down today. And I asked that we give a good look at this. I know the South Carolina DOT maintains those streets. They say speed bumps are a no-go, which is understandable because speed bumps are not for a residential street. There are other alternatives to calm the traffic, like a speed hump, which would actually bring the speed down to about 15, 20 miles per hour, as well as be a split system so emergency personnel can safely and quickly get into and get to the back of the neighborhood. So I ask that the town actually look into finding a way to make the area safer for us, for the dozens of other people like me and my wife we can't go to our neighbors anymore because we just get insulted telling us to mind our own business, don't we have anything better to do? As if being safe is something that I shouldn't be worried about. And I'd be more than happy to come back, to meet anytime, to help, to provide some of the research that I found from the National Transportation Agency, and thank you.
Thank you very much. As is a process, typically public comment goes unresponded to. We listen, we take into advisement. I think it's exceedingly fair, however, given the amount of discussion on both of these topics, that council and I have an opportunity to share information on how we got to this point. As many of you recognized, the dates for the designation of highway commercial along the corridor of a bypass occurred a long time ago. There were public meetings held in a great number for the design, construction, and opening of the bypass, for the school to be sited, and this council, in and of itself, set aside a council member and asked him to get a collection of people together, a committee, and to look into an overlay district for the bypass to ensure that it didn't become an ugly place. He spent 10 months. People from the public were involved for all 10 months. They brought those recommendations and they were voted on by this council in 2014. We have not had any reports of any issues related to the schools. The information that you provide to us through research, thank you. We certainly do research as well. Many of the people that commented toward this said you would welcome a Starbucks. I believe one of you did at the podium tonight. To cite a Starbucks there requires a zoning designation of highway commercial. Unfortunately, and I have asked our attorney this morning, is there any law that allows us to write a zone and state a preference of brand in that zone? And the answer is no. We can't choose if it's a red convenience store or a blue convenience store. We don't have that choice. It's fair game to anyone that wants to follow the zoning and the code enforcement that is put forth by this council in town. We have one set of storage units in the town of Fort Mill. The rest are in the county or surrounding areas. As a council, we carefully review and are allowed more than once to vote on these particular issues. And we had been hearing that people would like to have, no lie, people would like a Target there. They would like a Starbucks there. They would like a nice restaurant there. All those things require the zoning that we put on it, but we have no legal right to choose which brand of business cites itself there. We appreciate you voicing your concerns. I would encourage each of you that have concerns that perhaps weren't here when all those meetings were held or unaware of the information that's posted on the Facebook or on our website, or read the newspaper stories that are posted on the internet about these decisions, that you kind of lean in towards that. It's a good flow of information. It's boring sometimes, terribly, and it might not be about your backyard, but it's information flow that we pride ourselves on making sure that we provide. This council meeting is open to the public anytime. Many of you thanked us for hearing you. It's your right to come and sign in and speak if you so desire. It is our job to listen. That doesn't mean that we'll be able to do anything, but it does mean that is our job and your right. And I sincerely appreciate you coming before us to speak, Do I have any other members of council that need to make a comment?
I just like, excuse me, like to mention the couple talking about speeding.
Yes, sir.
They're my neighbors.
Yes, sir. I figured as much. I figured as much. Speeding is a problem. I live on the east side of town as well. We have a small neighborhood, 37 houses, cul-de-sac, one way in, one way out. We asked Chief Helms to put one of the speed signs in our neighborhood, just like yours. It says 20 miles an hour, and we had a person clocked at 57. 57. We don't have sidewalks in my neighborhood, and everybody has a dog, and we all walk our dogs. So, the best thing we can do is to continue to enforce the speed limits, and I really appreciate the work of our police department. We do all that we can to ensure that we live in a safe community. I live here too, as do my council members.
You know, one of the things that, in regarding to speeding, we've got several people from Massey here, and I will tell you, I know that's a common topic in Massey as well. So a lot of the people there have put out the children at play signs to try to help slow people down. I myself have stood out in front of a car that was going way too fast to try to make her slow down. She politely responded by speeding up and flipping the bird. So, yeah, we're all
Not
dealing
funny,
with
but
that.
funny.
Not funny, but yeah, it's just where we're at in the world today. But to understand that we all are trying to be respectful of having a community that we can all grow up in together, and that our children can be raised in and be raised safely. But we do appreciate you guys coming out. We hope that you will continue to stay involved in the community. I will speak on behalf of our Planning Commission, who does a phenomenal job of trying to give us an environment or buildings in this environment that really stand out and make Fort Mill proud. I assure you, what they give us when they go back and forth with the developers is pretty commercial property. It's not run down. They do the best they can given our zoning, but they also have to abide by the rules that are set forth there. And we've spent, how many years? 2 years trying to do the UDO? Almost three now, yeah. Trying to get better zoning and improve it. You would not believe where we started with 3 years ago. So we're continuing to try to make enhancements to those zonings so that the people coming in to build, whether it's homes or commercial property, do so at a different standard in Fort Mill than you would see in other areas. We're really trying to improve the town we have and trying to still give it that hometown feel that many of us grew up here with, or that you moved here from other places to be involved with. So again, we appreciate it. We hope you guys will all, with the voice that you have, will use it for things like the census that'll be coming up, where we could really use some help trying to make the voice above the river heard as loud as the one south of the river. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to any of this council about that. But the census will be very important for us to having a louder voice when it comes to York County and the way it relates to our government.
I second the part about the census. You know, everybody dismisses that as something that's unimportant. It will define how many voices we have at the table in Columbia and in the county. We need to fill out the form.
Can I say something?
Absolutely.
Mr. Hayes, thank you. He gave me a call on Saturday. We talked, 10 or 15 minutes, and yeah, just kind of about this, and then
You
just
got
started.
out right.
Yeah, you met his match for the talker here. Sorry, he was probably this guy. We're going to
teasing,
stop
Chris.
talking, but thank you for the call, and for coming. So thank you.
Anyone else? We'll move forward with the remainder of our agenda. Presentations. Presentation number 1, Certificate of Appreciation presentation to Chip Heemsaw and Melissa White. I believe they're both in attendance this evening. There are no words adequate enough to say thank you for people that volunteer their time for the betterment of our community and help us to stay within the guidelines that make our community better. These two individuals have unselfishly devoted time, free time, when I already know how busy they are. Melissa, 11 years of service for the Fort Mill Historic Review Board. That's incredible. Thank you so much. And Chip just had to one-up her. Chip Heemsall, 12 years of service with the Fort Mill Historic Review Board. I want to say that these boards don't get paid a dime. They don't get paid anything. We owe them our gratitude because they are the ones that work hard to ensure that we maintain the historic preservation within our community, and they've done a fabulous job. Fabulous job. So I want to thank them both, and I'd appreciate it if we had a round of applause.
I would just like to say for those that are still here from before, we do have a lot of volunteer committees that you can reach out to and get involved with on whether it's Historic Review Board, whether it's zoning, many different areas that you can get involved with ahead of the game. And we certainly are always looking for people to put their assets to use in a positive way to make a difference in Fort Mill.
All righty then, presentation number 2. Presentation of the fiscal year 2017-18 audit, David Phillips with Green Finney LLP. Hi,
I'm not
Shantae.
David, but
Hi.
hi,
Thank you so much
Mayor
for joining
and
us.
members of council. The 17-18 audit is complete. We've had another favorable year.
Yay.
So David Phillips from our audit firm of Green Finney is here to give you a summary overview.
Excellent.
David?
Excellent. Thank you, Shantae.
All right. I know some of you enjoy this, some of you hate this presentation,
You just don't have my checkbook.
but
That's
it is
good.
what it is. But as you have before you, you have a nice green bound report. That's the full financial statements, right? But what we have tried to do is summarize it in a PowerPoint that you have before you, but is also on the screen where we try to hit the highlights.
Thank you.
So as we go through that again, if you have any questions, please feel free to interject, or if you want to wait to the end, that will be fine as well. All right. Well, we'd like to remind everybody on the first page, or on the first slide, it's the town's responsibility to have strong internal controls. You as a council and management as a whole, you want to make sure that there's checks and balances in an organization, that one person can't do every part of the process. And so one of the things that we try to do as your auditors is look at your significant internal control processes and make sure there are checks and balances. Now, we don't look at insignificant areas, but like for bank recs, if we don't see bank recs aren't being prepared regularly on a timely basis, it's important that not only management knows, but it's important that you know. Because how can you fix it if you don't know there's something broke? So again, the importance of controls there. Also that these are your financial statements. And our responsibility, which is on the next slide here, is to issue an opinion on these financial statements. We look at things from a materiality perspective. That's generally around 2 to 3%. So think if there's $100, if you're missing a quarter, our procedures really are not designed to catch that. But if it's $5, our procedures in general terms should catch that type of discrepancy. And the reason why we can't look at things on a smaller level, because if we try to do what we would call a super audit, your fee would go up about 10 or 11 times for us to look at it at that level. So we're trying to get there to like a 95-degree certainty level on whether your financial statements are materially correct. On the bottom there, you've been issued an unmodified opinion, which is the best you can get. If it was modified, we would say everything looks good except for something, and you really don't want one of those. All right, so let's look at your general fund. Look at that chart. That's kind of a nice chart. A lot of people would be very envious of that chart. But your total fund balance increased $1.9 million to $11 million. You have a little bit of non-spendable fund balance, a little bit of assigned fund balance, and then you're left with a category which means there's no constraints of unassigned, which is about $10.9 million, which is about 65% of your 2018 actual expenditures and about 53% of your 2019 budgeted expenditures. The GFOA, which is the Government Finance Officers Association, they recommend a minimum of 2 months. And so you can see you're really doing extremely well. And remember, this is in addition to the fact that each year you're transferring money over into your capital projects fund to begin to put seed money and to help with future projects. Just think if all that money was just left in the general fund and it built up, your numbers would even be greater there. All right, so let's look at why do you want to maintain a strong fund balance? Remember, some of your revenues are very cyclical. Business licenses come in at one time. Property taxes, real property tax, remember they get billed in October or September. You collect most of them in December if you want the tax deduction, then January and February, and then you really don't collect a lot more real property taxes. Also, it helps you if you have significant emergencies or unanticipated expenditures. It gives you flexibility. If you have a project, you may have a choice of not borrowing it all. You say, you know what, I want to pay for half of it and we'll borrow the other half. You have options. If you have to borrow, you get better rates. If they see you have a good track record and that you manage your affairs well, you're going to get a lot better rate on your debt than someone else out there. It helps you to cover potential shortfalls. What if the state begins to cut back on your local aid formula? You have the ability to absorb some of that. It's just important in uncertain economic times. You know, we always talk about having a rainy day, a contingency fund. Personally, you need that as a government as well. All right, well, let's look at your general fund revenues. They totaled $21.6 million. The biggest piece there being your property taxes at about $8.3 million. You have about $7.3 million in fines, fees, licenses, and permits. Those are a lot of your growth revenues, those are the ones when the economy is really going well. They're up, but they can drop very quickly as well if the economy turns. You have $1.9 million in charges for services, $2.5 million in intergovernmental revenue and grants, and then $1.6 million in other revenues. As you compare to the prior year, you increased the revenue by about 17%, or $3.2 million, primarily in those growth revenues. Think about all those business licenses and building permits that are going, but also you're receiving a pretty big increase in the heavy equipment rental fees of about $1 million. And that was a revenue source a year or so ago that started, and it's just continued to ramp up. And so that's been a nice benefit for the town as well. As it relates to your budget, you came in $3.4 million over budget, or 19% favorable, and it's a lot of those same areas. And another thing I would tell you, your staff, just because you got it last year, don't automatically book as if you're going to get it next year plus a 4% increase. They're going to be a little bit conservative because there will be a pullback one day. We're not going to have this great recovery forever, and you sure don't want to be projecting a growth on top of other growth and then it pulls back. All right, let's look at your expenditures. Your general fund expenditures were $16.7 million. We kind of list the biggest areas. Generally what we see is always public safety is the largest. It usually runs anywhere from 45 to 60% in most governments. You see there public works and general government as well, and culture, recreation, capital outlay of about 1.5, and then other expenditures there. It was an increase of about $1.4 million, or 9% over the prior year. Pretty much across a lot of your departments, but remember this year you had a number of new salary positions. You also did a 3% COLA. And then also, unfortunately, there's just higher benefit costs. Think of the state pension plan. They're raising their rates 1 to 2% a year. 2% last year is going to keep going up 1% in the future. So all that begins to affect year over year. As it relates to your budget, you came in under budget, $2.7 million, or 14%. Primarily just due to certain positions that you had budgeted. Remember, when you budget a position, you're assuming they're there the whole year, but a lot of times you don't hire them until 3 months in. And then if someone leaves, it might take you 3 to 6 months to replace. So a lot of that under budget is just unfilled positions. And then also some of the timing on your capital outlay. You may have expected to do a certain project this year and it wasn't quite ready and it got moved into fiscal year 2019. All right, well, let's look at another one of your major governmental funds, your Capital Projects Fund. had a net increase in fund balance of $4.6 million versus an increase of $2 million in the prior year. This year, we pulled out the hospitality tax revenues and created a new fund for it. So if you look in these green financial statements in the very back, you're going to see this new column for hospitality taxes because we wanted to kind of make it distinct so that you could really see the activity there. Also, if you look at your expenditures there, you had expenditures of about $800,000, and those were primarily composed of capital outlay related to the new fire station and upgrades to the Walter Elisha Park. Remember, we talked about the transfer in from the general fund to the capital projects fund. That was $3.8 million this year based on your fund balance policy. And that's just huge to be able to try to get ahead of the curve and be able to put money aside for future projects so that your only option isn't just always borrowing. You always have another mechanism to help fund some of those projects. All right, well, let's look at your gross revenue fund, some of your enterprise fund. This one in particular is your water and sewer. Had an increase in net position of $7.4 million compared to $9.1 million in the prior year. Your operating revenues increased about $2.2 million. The increase was primarily due to higher water and sewer sales. Remember, as you continue to add more lines, water and sewer sales are going up. Also, you get a lot of tap fees and a lot of initiation type of fees to start those lines as well. Your operating expenses increased approximately $800,000. You transferred to the general fund about $800,000 to cover overhead because remember, David and a lot of the staff are having to work on matters that relate to water and sewer, and that is to try to cover some of the costs that everybody bears in the general government related to the water and sewer activities. You also had capital contributions of water and sewer lines that get donated from developments and so forth, and that was about $2.6 million. And you're getting a lot of those year over year, and so that's where a lot of that increase is coming from as well. We mentioned just your stormwater fund, not a ton of activity as it compares to that gross revenue fund, but it did have an increase in net position of about $100,000, and we show you the revenues and the expenses, and it has total capital assets of about $600,000. All right, well, let's look briefly at the state retirement plans. Remember, you participate in those. In the GASB, which is the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, they set all the accounting rules. They say even if you don't have your own plan, but if you participate in a state cost-sharing plan, then every participating government has to record their proportionate share of the asset or the liability related to that plan. Well, in the state of South Carolina, those are pretty big liabilities, like $22 billion on the state level just for the SCRS. So what ends up happening is we take your contributions paid into the PIBA as a percentage of all contributions paid into the PIBA that they manage the retirement system. And whatever that percentage is, that's the percentage of the liability you get. And so that changes every year, but think about it, you're growing, so you're going to get a higher percentage every year. Whereas if another entity out there is holding pretty constant, theirs may not change a lot. So when you look down below and you look at your pension liability, it increased to $17.6 million versus $15.5 million in the prior year. Again, that was because of that proportionate change. The real kicker for you is that when David and Shantae are having to do the budget, the way that this costs you is that your rates are going up every year. See, the GASB took the position, even though you don't statutorily pay retirees their benefits, but if the state is underfunded, where are they going to get the money from? They're going to raise your rates. You are going to pay for it. It's just going to be over time. And so that's how they're getting you now is that every year they're raising those rates another 1%. And that's 1% over all your payroll. And so every year your budget needs go up. And what you have to budget for your benefits go up. And there's a whole bunch of pension disclosures in this report, about 8 pages. So if you ever get bored or want something to help you go to sleep at night, read that. So I wanted to mention that so that when we look at your government-wide statements, and remember your general fund kind of shows everything kind of on a cash basis or soon to be cash. So it's going to be cash or receivables that are going to be collected pretty soon. Well, these government-wide statements, which are called GASB 34, they want you to add all of your assets and liabilities. So that would be this building. That would be all your vehicles, all your water and sewer lines. And they will also want you to add all your debt so we can see what is the net worth of the town. Very similar to a manufacturing company, a bank, or IBM or something to that effect. So when we look at these statements, you had total assets of $119.5 million, of which $62.7 million is your property, plant, and equipment. But you did have cash and investments of $53.4 million, and then $3.4 million in other types of assets. There's some deferred items, and then there's liabilities of $38.8 million. You have long-term obligations. That would be your own debt. But there's that pension liability where it shows up. We have to record that pension liability, and when we record it, when we look in the top right of that slide, it reduces the unrestricted net position. So before we had to ever implement this pension standard, your unrestricted, in theory, would be up another $16 million, or excuse me, 17.6. But it dropped when we had to implement those new accounting standards. All right, want to briefly look at your capital assets. The balance there was $62.7 million. It increased 14.9. Y'all have just had so much activity going on. And poor Shantae is trying to get her hands around all this activity because it is moving quick. So you look at the additions you have. That's equivalent to a lot of really large cities additions. Well, you're having that pretty regularly now. You had a good bit of land additions to construction in progress. Some of that is on the water and sewer. Infrastructure with water and sewer a lot of times as well. Purchase of vehicles and other capital assets. So when we capitalize something, then we begin to depreciate it. The depreciation expense was about $2.2 million. So when you net the additions minus that the depreciation, that gives you that net change for the year. Construction in progress at at 9/30/18 was about $2.1 million, and it consisted of ongoing costs for your software. You had a lot of that going on. Park upgrades, the fire substation, and still projects related to the wastewater treatment facility as well. All right, let's look briefly at your long-term obligation. These are your own debt obligations. The balance there was $18.8 million. It decreased 1.2. You didn't have any new debt issuances this year, but you just paid down on your existing debt. You made your annual mortgage payments. You do have expected debt service payments in fiscal year 19 of about 1.9. So again, that's your next year mortgage payment. We wanted to highlight here, because I know you were in the process right after year-end of the new bond issuance, let you see what your rate covenant was, and you can see how strong that is. What they normally want is 120. You're over 400%. That's a really strong coverage percent. That means you could issue debt and easily cover it, because you have such strong earnings potential in that water and sewer fund. All right, wanted to mention some accounting changes down the road. There's some accounting changes related to fiduciary activities, and we'll be meeting with Shantae to kind of look at these. And those are activities that you're holding money on behalf for somebody else. And so if you have any of that, there's some new kind of accounting rules on that. The other is on leases, that if you enter into a long-term lease, on the government-wide statements and on your utility fund, they want you to treat leases now as debt. So let me give you an illustration. Let's say your water and sewer facility decided it wanted to rent a building at $100,000 a year for 5 years. That would now show up as a liability for $500,000 and as an asset for $500,000. They want you to treat it like a debt transaction now going forward. So that will be the change that will kick in 2021. All right. We did have one issue we wanted to note to you. A lot of this, and it's in the back of your report if you ever want to see more details, but you just have so much capital asset activity going on. And a lot of donations. And one of the things we want to encourage you as a council, if there's a way when you accept donations that you could do it formally always and try to get a value for it, because if not, Shantae may not know that it exists. And then number two, she has to capitalize it. And so with the amount of growth you're having on, and then a lot of transition on the software and some staffing changes, some of those items just didn't get caught till later in the game. Now, they're in the financial statements, but that was kind of what the issue was. So we wanted to make you aware of it. And I think now that as the staffing gets up in the software, we've moved to the new software, I really think that won't be an issue going forward, but we had some hiccups just some this year. All right, we did not have to do a single audit this year. If you ever expend more than $750,000 in federal money, we have to do kind of a compliance audit. And then the last thing there is the management letter, and you have this separate letter that you received. It's like a couple pages long. And if there was something in there that was troubling to us, or let's say we got in a big disagreement with David or Shantae, or we felt like they needed to book something, they didn't, we'd have to notify you of that. Well, there's nothing like that in this letter, so it's kind of boilerplate, but we just wanted to make sure we mentioned that to you. All right, lastly here, again, you have an unmodified opinion. And you really have just really strong financial condition. You're really in a good state. Any questions? Because I know I go kind of quick.
It was all good, though.
Yes?
I've got one.
Yes.
Through this whole chart, and I'm thinking telephony, net income here, but is there a way in this audit report we can look and what is total net income? That's my annual question every time you
we'll
stand
turn to
there.
that so that you can see
was on the
that.
back.
Turn to page 7 in your report. And these are like the MD&A. It's a summary statement, so it's sometimes a little easier to see. But if you look on the bottom of 7 where it says change in net position, that's kind of like the change in net income.
Right. Okay.
And so you can see there, look, this year, $24.9 million increase. That's pretty strong. A lot of people would love to have that. And you can look at the last year, it was pretty strong too. Now, remember, you're in a high growth time. These days will not always last. And so I just want to encourage you to also remember what goes up will come back down. And just be, again, always save and be good stewards because you want to be able to be prepared for when there is that downtick.
Can I ask a question
Yes.
regarding that?
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm seeing a pretty substantial variance or increase in capital grants and contributions. Is that some of the items you touched on earlier?
Some of those.
What would some of that be?
The capital,
Parks,
the
or-
capital grants a lot of times will be various infrastructure, property that was donated. Think about the recreation
Yeah,
property.
yeah,
All
yeah.
that stuff has to get valued. And see, that's what makes it really hard. Someone might give it to you, but they don't tell you what it's worth. And you may have got it in the minutes, but if Shantae doesn't get it, she has to then come up with a value. We got to capitalize it. It just makes the process pretty challenging sometimes. Yeah, but you're getting a lot of donations. That may not always hold, but
So what's the best method you recommend?
well, what
for
we'd
staff?
like to do is if you have someone like building the water sewer lines and then they donate it to you from a development, they have to provide you their contractor cost on what it costs to build it, and they have to give that to you before you accept it, because then you have the number. You know what they had to pay to get it built.
Right.
That would help. Now, if it's other type of property, sometimes you can get a quick appraisal or something and make that a requirement for you to accept it. If it's something significant like big piece of property, 150 acres or whatever it is,
Right.
you need to know what it is so that you can capitalize that.
Right.
Dear Lord, I hope we have somebody give us 150 acres.
Well, yeah, the odds of that happening won't be so great.
Yeah, we're very blessed to
Yes.
have great philanthropic families in this community that has helped us through the gifts that they have
Right.
given to us. So thank you so much for pointing out how we can do that better. So with that, council, do you have any questions? Hearing none, thank you so much.
All right, thank
We
you.
greatly appreciate it. Old business items. Old business item number 1, second reading, an ordinance amending the mixed-use concept plan and development conditions for the Rutledge MXU project consisting of York County tax map numbers 0202101330331 and 332, containing approximately 49.298 plus or minus acres, located at the southwest corner of the intersection of Springfield Parkway and US Highway 21 bypass. This is in Ward 2, which is Mr. Helms's ward, and Chris Pettit is our resident expert. Do I have a
I
motion?
make a motion to accept old business item number 1.
I have a motion and a second to accept it. Chris, do you have anything you need to make us aware of since the last time we had this on our agenda?
No updates since first.
No updates, no changes.
Correct.
Council, do you have any questions for Chris?
And Chris, just for clarification, the way it's being presented to us today versus the way it was originally approved a few years ago, it's a decrease in the number of residents that will be there, correct?
Correct. It's a decrease in both the residential and the commercial density
Okay.
for the project.
And just for validation, again, if we were to vote this down, we would go back to the higher number of residential homes.
It would be approved for a larger number of homes and commercial square footage.
So this changes for a decrease?
Correct.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Chris, that's the old campground, right?
This is the property across Springfield Parkway from Captain Steve's. I do believe it's the old.
Further questions for Chris? Hearing none, we have a motion on the table to approve this item. All that are voting to approve it, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay.
Nay.
We have 1 nay and 6 ayes. Thank you. New business items. New business item number 1, first reading and public hearing. An ordinance annexing York County Tax Map Number 710400002 portion containing approximately 13.15 plus or minus acres located off Horse Road. This is also in Ward 2. This will be Councilman Helms's ward. And Penelope is our resident expert. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to accept new business item number 1.
I have a motion and a second to accept. Hi, Penelope.
Good evening, everyone. This is an annexation by the applicant of Darrell Walters on behalf of Leroy Springs. They're requesting 13.15 acres. The staff and planning commission did recommend approval of this annexation. It is incomparable with the comprehensive plan and also with the designation of nearby properties. Just for council to know that the applicant did state that the 13.15 acres consisted of property that was currently associated with the horse barn and equestrian facilities that are part of the greenway, and therefore the request is for them to consolidate the property with the larger greenway property. The applicant also noted that there were no plans to utilize their property for anything else than what it is used today to serve as part of the greenway properties.
Do you have any questions for Penelope? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Oh, was I supposed to have a public hearing? Well, you yanked my chain once or twice. Sorry about that. Let's open the public hearing. Are there any public comments that need to be made? Going once? We're going to close the public hearing. Now we'll go back to the motion on the table, which is to approve. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. It's a unanimous. Penelope, I have a question. Have we introduced you to date?
Yes.
We have?
Yes, it was at a morning session.
All right, for all of those that came to an evening session, this is Penelope. We were blessed to acquire Penelope for our town planner, and she is fantastic. We're very, very excited to have her here and on our team. And while we're at it, Chris, have we announced you at one of our meetings? Would you stand, please? Guys, this is Chris Sardelli. Chris is a Fort Mill resident, and he is our new public relations manager here at the town of Fort Mill. He has served in several capacities, working for Atrium Health and for Lancaster. He's been a newspaper reporter. Don't hold that against him. He's a really good guy. I'm teasing. We're very fortunate to have both of these new employees serving us and working on our team, and we're just thrilled to have you. Thanks so much.
Kim, before you run off.
Sure.
The one that we just approved, what is the little square right in the middle that's not part of that?
I'm not sure if Mr. Walters, if you could answer.
I think that's a GIS map, because the survey really does not, that shows the property in its entirety. And not necessarily, can I show you the? Sure. I
was just curious, because it's got that little square right in the middle of it.
That's the whole tax map, and the part that's being annexed. This is that square. This is the part that's being annexed, which is Jason.
Okay.
Mayor, that's Miss Close's home.
Yeah, it's the white homestead in her house, correct. Is in the part we're not annexed, correct.
Any further questions? Thank you, Penelope. Are you up again?
Yes, I am.
This time I see that public hearing. New business item number 2, first reading and public hearing, an ordinance authorizing a third amendment to the development agreement by and between the town of Fort Mill and Leroy Springs and Company Incorporated to amend the property subject to the terms and conditions of the development agreement and other matters relating thereto. This is in Ward 2. Councilman Helms, and Penelope is our resident expert. Let us open the public hearing. Anyone need to speak in the public hearing? We will close the public hearing. Now I need a motion.
Make a motion to accept new business item number 2.
I have a motion and a second. Penelope?
Since we just annexed the property to the MXU zoning district, this development, there was an amendment to their development agreement. So this is a third amendment, and we're just basically adding the parcel that we just approved into the town limits to this document. And both the Planning Commission and staff recommends approval.
All righty then. Thank you for letting us know that. All right. Questions, council members? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion to be accepted, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
New business item number 3, a resolution to appoint and commission. May I, Barry, I'm asking you, Davey, Chris, whomever, because these are identical, may I read one and insert all names and do it at one time?
No reason you can't.
Thank you so very much. With that, we have a resolution to appoint and commission the following people as code enforcement officers for the proper and security and general welfare of the town of Fort Mill. That would be Brad Previtt, Sherry Wright, Jacqueline Martin, and Penelope, oh boy, Karagunis. Did I do it right?
You sure did.
I hear you. I just don't like to slaughter names.
It's a good Greek name.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Let me read the resolution, since I just love reading. A resolution to appoint and commission each of these individuals as a code enforcement officer for the proper security and general welfare for the town of Fort Mill. Whereas the Fort Mill Town Council, in the exercise of its general police power, is empowered to protect the health and safety of its residents of the town of Fort Mill. And whereas the town of Fort Mill Town Council is further authorized by Section 5-7-32 of the Code of Laws of South Carolina, 1976, as amended, to appoint and commission as many code enforcement officers as may be necessary for the proper security, general welfare, and convenience of the town. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Brad Previtt is hereby appointed and commissioned as a code enforcement officer of the town of Fort Mill for the purpose of providing for the proper security, general, boy, it's repeated like 6 times, general welfare and convenience of the town, replete with all the powers and duties conferred by law upon constables, in addition to such duties as may be imposed upon him by the governing body of this town, including the enforcement of the town's stormwater regulations and the use of ordinance summons, and with all the powers and duties conferred pursuant to the provisions of Section 5-7-32 of the Code of Laws of South Carolina, 1976, as amended. Provided, however, Brad Previtt, Sherry Wright, Jacqueline Martin, Penelope Karagunis shall not perform any custodial arrests, no Barney, in the exercise of his duties as a code enforcement officer. This appointment shall remain in effect only until such time as each of you are no longer employed by the town of Fort Mill to enforce the town's stormwater regulations. Would each of you stand and come forward, please, so that we might recognize you? You're the only one, Penelope. Done. All right. We have a motion to accept. All those in favor, please.
I would have a motion
For
to
each.
approve items number 3, 4, 5, and 6.
I got you. Do I have a motion to?
Make a motion to approve new business items 3, 4, 5, and 6.
Thank you.
Second.
I have a motion, multiple seconds. Anybody have any questions? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving business items 3, 4, 5, and 6, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Thank you very much. New business item number 7, a resolution directing the Fort Mill Planning Commission to conduct studies and to develop and make recommendations for a 5-year update to the capital improvements plan and impact fee ordinance as provided for in the South Carolina Development Impact Fee Act. There is no public hearing on this one, so I need a motion.
I make a motion to emphatically accept new business item number 7.
I have a motion for emphatically approving this one. Is it emphatic?
It can be, yes.
Gleefully.
Gleefully.
Okay, wondrously. I have a motion and a second. Do we have any questions that might be proposed or asked? Hearing none. Mr. Pettit, do you need to say anything?
I don't unless you have questions. This is just a procedural requirement to update our, all the plans and studies and ordinances related to impact fees every 5 years.
For those,
Can I ask one question?
of course.
When will you guys gonna redo the study to determine would the 2,500 tick up or down? Right.
This is for the town's impact fees for municipal facilities, fire protection, and parks and recreation. Part of that study, we'll look at what the maximum allowable fees would be that we could charge for residential, commercial properties. It basically follows the exact same process that it did the first time, where council would get a report that shows that maximum allowable. You'd then get the opportunity to approve any discount rates based off of policy decision. And it is essentially going through the approval process, same as it did in 2014-15.
So it'll be 20 this year, we do that, or next year?
The resolution directs planning commission and staff to go through 180 days.
Okay.
We hope we can do that in 180 days.
All right, thank you.
I, for one, would like to publicly state that those impact fees have been a very positive enactment by this town council for future funding. We were very fortunate that we as a council were a bit divided on the front end of those discussions. I, for one, said no. But we adjusted the impact fees to not do harm to commercial development, but rather to pull from the residential development what we need to move forward, and I'm very pleased. This week's groundbreaking at the new fire station is a prime example of how those impact fees are going to help us to add services that are beneficial to our community. So thank you so much for following this and allowing us to continue to look forward.
What really allows growth to pay for growth?
In most cases.
Yeah.
It does. It helps.
It helps.
All right, we have a motion to emphatically approve. And fanatically approve. Okay, all those fanatics, please say that support the approval of this motion. Please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Thank you so much. All righty then. Yeah, it's good to see a smile. Information and discussion, item number 1, 2019 sewer capital improvement projects. Greg Rushing. No motion needed. Hi.
Hello. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
As you probably know, since you voted on it several times, we've finished the financing arrangements for our treatment plant, for our elevated water tank, and for the meter replacement project. And since we've completed that, right? Okay. Always check with Shantae before I say that.
Water from it, like you've been saying?
Pardon?
You'll drink the first glass of water?
Yeah.
I'll jump in it and swim in it if you want me to. It's 1 million gallons. It's got a lot of room. But anyway, as we finish that financing, we've recognized we have some reserve funds that we roll over as they're not spent on a regular basis. And we'd really like to proceed to develop a complete capital improvement plan. In other words, our sewer improvements as we move forward. And these two projects, especially the sanitary sewer evaluation study, will let us identify specifically inflow and infiltration, we call it I&I, into the gravity sewer system. And essentially, if you look at the memo, we've identified those drainage areas that essentially outline the entire old system in town. Certainly the new developments have brand new infrastructure They're really good at being self-sealing, having very little I&I. But the old section could use some work. So the study itself is to go through approximately 277,000 linear feet of gravity sewer, and we've counted 1,273 manholes. I imagine there are a few more stuck in there that we don't have mapped. But we have one proposal already, and we've gotten interest from across the state on this advertising. I've set up meetings probably with 6 to 8 engineering firms already to complete that project, and we're transferring or hope to use $225,000 or $225,000 because we have to integrate that into our GIS, and hopefully in the future with our finance projects into an asset management program. And the second part of that is our lift station rehab engineering only. We're trying to be very conservative, make sure we use our funds properly. So we're trying to get engineering on our 3 worst lift stations, and we'll certainly conduct a tour if anybody's interested. But at least the engineering will set us up for how many lift stations we can actually work on in the next few years. We've estimated that at $350,000. I don't mind telling you that was a wild guess. It depends upon the nature of the engineering and how we go about actually correcting those lift station problems. So hopefully that will take us through that project and lead us into the capital improvements for next year and the years to come.
Outstanding. It's such music to my ear to hear that we are actually making those steps to plan aggressively for the future and the updates that are needed. It's a very good thing to hear.
And usually, as usual in any system, it starts in the old section.
Of course.
So,
They're only 100 years old, I mean, what's the
yeah, what's your problem?
175, you know.
So this
6-1.
will give us the mapping that we've been talking about with all the cameras and everything else too, but that we will have a better understanding of where everything is.
Correct. Actually, the mapping is fairly decent, and I'll go through that. Even, especially on the new ones, we actually get the CAD drawings and just drop those into the map. This will verify via GPS locations every manhole in this study, and that's where our errors are generally in the old system.
Just out of
Fantastic.
curiosity, how many lift stations total do we have?
We have 31 or 32. It's hard to keep up whether we have accepted new ones or not, but we've got about 31.
And you have the 3 on here, 3 lift stations that are identified are on the list of pipe that needs to be replaced also. Can you do those separately, or have to be done at the same time?
Oh, it's completely a separate operation, yes.
So we can put all new pipe into
When
an
you
old
get
lift
to-
station and then
Well,
turn
it's
around
not a
and do-
replacement of pipe. If we, in other words, if we find, some of the old sewer is clay. So if we find a broken spot, we'll just dig it up and spot repair it. If it's a whole line, we'll actually do some lining where they insert basically a sock and cure a fiberglass type lining. It's very little new pipe, I would guess. But the lift stations are completely separate. They have force mains attached to them that may be included in the pump station project.
All right.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great work. Great work. Thank you very much. Hey, Shantae.
I'm following up.
Okay.
To Greg.
Please do.
Greg was laying the groundwork tonight for you all concerning his project. When we were going through the process and the discussions for the funding for the treatment plant, it did come to our attention that some of the funds that we are bound to hold per our bond ordinance can be used for the things like Greg just stated. So in the audit, you heard the auditor talk about some reserved funds, some assigned funds. That's where that money is located. So we will be coming back to you with the budget amendment, because what he wants to do, if he starts it this fiscal year, will change the bottom line, and that requires your approval.
Outstanding. Boy, good financial news and future planning. I've been waiting for this for a while. Committee report number 1, report of staff for the consideration of a new appointment to the Accommodations Tax Advisory Committee. Davey.
Thank you, Mayor. Staff was prepared to ask for one appointment to the Accommodation Tax Advisory Committee tonight. But after advertising for the meeting, this particular meeting, we determined there's actually 2 seats that we need to fill. So because of that, we're going to have, we feel like we're going to have more than 2 names to provide you based on the specifications of this committee seats. So because of that, we would like to defer this to the ad hoc committee. We'll bring you the names and resumes in the next week or so, and have the ad hoc committee review it and make recommendations.
Okay. Council in agreement with that?
Yes.
All righty. Before we move into executive session, we do have 2 items this evening. Because everybody tends to drift away as we're in executive session, and I think this is really important. I see Brown on the back row. I see Chipper over here. I see Chris and Davey and Virginia. Everybody's here tonight that deserves a big thank you for Jeff. I told Davey today, and I did mean it, I've never seen our staff perform as well across the board for the Strawberry Festival as they did this year. Everyone to a point was smiling and pleasant and professional. We had complications with the weather. They took it in stride and they did what was right for the community. It was a very nice event. I am just so grateful for the work that everyone here does. Brownie, this has to be year 10 for you. You'd think it would get old, but it's something new every year, isn't it? So I would like, with council, to say thank you for the staff that continues to do their regular work through the week and still manages to pull off a festival like that once a year. So thank you so much deeply for the work that you do and the sacrifice that you make from your own family so that the rest of us can have a festival to be proud of.
And the volunteers behind the scenes.
Yeah, I should say, I saw your wife cooking quite a bit. We had a lot of volunteers, and we have a lot of people. I'm sure we'll have another presentation ultimately about the rollout from the festival. But there's so many people that are involved in making that a positive event, a safe event, and an enjoyable event. Thank you is just very small by comparison, but thank you. Alrighty then, executive session. Please note council may take action on executive session items listed on the agenda when we come back into public session. Executive session item number 1, discussions incident to a personnel matter, and executive session item number 2, discussions incident to potential contractual agreement for economic development services. Do I have a motion to move into executive session?
Make a motion.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in agreement, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, nay. We will return. Thank you. Let the record reflect that no vote was taken and no decisions were made in executive session. I need a motion to return.
I'll make that motion.
And I need a second.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to return to general session. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Thank you. All right. With that, we are at the adjournment period. I have already mentioned the wonderful opportunity to do the groundbreaking for the fire department. Chipper, you've done a stellar job in getting that absolutely where we're excited to see that happening. So thank you for everything you and all your folks have done. It was a great day and a fun event for all of us. Strawberry Festival was great. Mr. Huntley, what do you have for the good of the whole?
I was looking at something.
Mr. Huntley.
Past his bedtime.
I don't blame you. We're all tired. Mr. Huntley, what do you have for the good of the whole?
I'd like to mention that early this morning, only Trudy and Ronnie and I would remember, but Doris Day passed away.
Saw that too.
And,
Who was that?
Que sera, sera.
Whatever will be, will be.
Never heard of her.
The future's not ours to see. Say, Kara, Sarah.
Yes, sir, I was gonna say that. Okay, so whatever will be, will be.
Yes, Doris Day
And,
did pass
we went
away at
to
the
the-
ripe old age of 97.
Yeah, Patch and I went to the Strawberry, I keep wanting to call that the Peach Festival. We lived in Gaffney. Strawberry Festival, we got there just in time for the rain.
It waited for you to get there.
Yeah, Larry walked down the hill and started raining.
And the last thing, if you don't go, you really need, if you can get the schedule, Nation Forward, Choral Group, and also the Rock Hill, Fort Mill. I went to Nation Forward, my grandson sings in it, he has a solo.
It's amazing.
And it was just absolutely, one of the songs they sang was Home on the Range. I hadn't heard that in 60 years. And also they sang An Unclouded Day, which I was surprised at. But it's just a great group. And the choir director, this is his last year directing, and he made the statement that when he picked the numbers they were going to sing, he had in mind how that would make each member of the choir sound good. It was just amazing. And he's quite a fellow.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bowman. Mr. Shirey.
We left right before the rain came, so I'm thinking Larry brought the rain with him, but it was a great time. I had Alex and 3 of her girlfriends with us, and I just bought a bunch of tickets and let them go, and I walked around, talked to all the vendors, and they're all excited about the work we're doing at the park and can't wait for that and want to know if we're going to have vendors for other events we're going to be doing with the amphitheater. Staff did it, the emergency guys, the police guys, everybody did a fabulous job. Excited about the fire department. It's going to be awesome to have that up and running. And despite what everybody thinks, we actually do put a lot of thought into what we do and how this town is operating. And I think I'm very proud of the group that I work with you guys, the council and staff. And for these guys to not even know what's going on in their own backyard for 6 months, and then you're Johnny come lately and going to complain about it, I don't have time for you. Sorry. That ship has sailed.
Well, but it actually started long before that.
10 years ago.
Yeah, 10 years ago.
But everybody have a great week. We only have 14 more days and school's out. So
Yay.
Summer's about to hit.
Yay. I love summer. All right, Miss Lisa.
So Strawberry Festival, I was able to volunteer with the Fort Mill History Museum, which was neat to engage with those people. It's certainly, being a native here, it's interesting the pieces of that history that I haven't ever known. But also, I know a lot of people that come to the town that go, and this was one of their major fundraising events. So it was neat, and we still got to socialize. Love the fact that Strawberry Festival is such a safe environment. We can let our kids go, and that, my daughter enjoys hanging out with a police officer, so she's a little whacked, but that's okay. The group that was here earlier, I think it's important that those people that did sign the petition or want to have their voice heard, that they understand that that whole bypass is fortunately a bypass. We desperately needed it, but it's also nicknamed Education Highway. So you had the school district reaching out for large pieces of land that are in an area that's zoned commercial. So we're going to continue to see this overlap of things that are going to come that we may or may not like. We all are pushing hard for more commercial because it's less rooftops and it's more of the conveniences we want. But it's not always going to be the brand we want or the store we want. We're going to have to be a little accommodating. But it does come down to basic economics. It'll be supported and it'll thrive if it's what we want and it's what the community needs.
I agree with that. And I think that if everyone would take a deep breath, you would find that the growth rate here speaks loudly to the management here. It's not the reverse. If we were making a really big mess, people would not want to move here. People want to move here because it's a great place to live and there are great people here to share it with. I personally think the school district does a great job in citing their schools based on their state requirements. I think the highway was put there because we were crowded in town. We still have traffic bumper to bumper, but if you think it's bad here, go to Ballantyne, go to Indian Land, go to South Park,
Davidson.
Go to Davidson. There are areas that, it makes you realize how good we do have it. We do have it. Very, very nice place to live here. Very nice place. I'm grateful that they expressed their concerns. I wish they had done it directly to us. You know, to pick up the phone and call and ask questions is different than someone that wants to raise their voices against a decision that's already been made by the law and by our zoning and following the process, following the rules. So, you know, as fortune may have it, we know that with development things change. But we have to follow the law and we have to follow the process. So I'm grateful, you know, for where we are in this and that we'll move forward.
Excuse me.
Mr. Helms?
I was at the Strawberry Festival and it was a great event. I've helped my wife on top of the hill vault cooking for the police officers and the firemen and the volunteers that were there. It was good until the storms came. But it was a good event. Chris, I have a question. Where are we at with the water tower? I see all the work going in with the water lines, but I don't see any steel or anything over there as far as the tower itself.
Debbie, I don't know, do you know the answer to that?
Yeah, I know they're still installing the main water line going in. And this, I don't think they've completed that yet. Once it's completed, then they'll start building up.
Because I see a lot of people getting up in that area trying to take pictures and stuff, you know, in those trees. And it's,
The weather hasn't been their best friend.
yeah, I understand that too.
Mr. Moody?
Been told I talk too much and cough too much. So, that being said, I did really enjoy the Strawberry Festival and the wrestling. My kids always enjoy the wrestling. Wrestling,
Wrestling,
yeah.
that's what it's called.
And there was a guy out there that was around my father's age, and he was wearing pink leggings and a pink, some sort of get-up shirt.
Was he a wrestler?
He was a wrestler.
He was a wrestler.
Yes,
okay.
my kids would say, but they enjoyed it. That's our favorite thing that my kids enjoy. My allergies have been bothering Mr. Helms, so I apologize for my coughing. Chipper, thank you for the fire department dedication and for our little swag that we got for all of us. I will display that proudly at my cubicle tomorrow. And that's all I have.
Well, I enjoyed the fishing. I watched kids fish.
Oh, yeah.
From the Cabela's.
Kayak thing was pretty cool.
Yeah, Cabela's had it neat.
That was great. Great addition. And the pork chop sandwich was great.
Mm-hmm.
Trudy?
Well, I was going to address the gentleman from.
Blackwood Park?
Well, first of all, he didn't even know the name of our neighborhood.
I heard that.
White something.
Park.
White Park. Well, it's not White Park, and I started to stand up and tell him. Lived there 49 years. I know the name of it. But I do appreciate the quick reaction or the quick action from the police department in handling that particular situation. Was he the one that was taking the pictures?
Must have been, I'm not sure.
And some of you may not know what was going on, but he took some pictures of speeders on Spring Street and he posted them on Whitewood Park page, trying to, I guess, embarrass people. And somehow Gwen found out about it and she notified Chief Helms and they kind of went from there. And I understand they, I think, gave out some morning tickets and maybe some tickets and
they stepped up patrols and
stepped
were
up the
able
patrols
to make it evident to folks that the speed limit is only 20.
It is only 20.
I think it's important to note, and I didn't say it to him, but I think it's important to note, I also received texts and emails and phone calls from people that said 20 is too slow for that neighborhood. So we have people on both sides of that fence. I am not a proponent of speed bumps unless they're on Main Street. If we can't put them on Main Street, we're not putting them in neighborhoods. I don't disagree, but it is important that we recognize as individuals we have a responsibility to follow the law. You know,
Is 20 the town
for
designated
neighborhoods.
limit?
Just down in there.
It's just in that.
It's in my
Because on
neighborhood.
Harris it goes from 35 to 20 to.
Well, Harris,
That's
the reason they put that 25-mile-an-hour speed limit on Harris is because of that dangerous hill, and there's a bus stop right there at my street.
Right.
And you come up through there running 35 or 40 miles an hour and top the hill, then it's a very dangerous intersection.
Well, on Spring Street and on Unity Street, both of those streets have hills on them. David, you live back over, both of those have hills on them, and when you're going down the hill, if you don't have your foot on the brake, you can't help but go but 25 or 26, 27 miles an hour. Now, I think what this gentleman was talking about were these actual speeders that were doing more than that particular. But,
I mean, is that something that we could do, like we say, you're in a full residential area, houses on both sides, speed limit's 30. You're in a residential area with houses only on one side, it's 35. You have residents and commercial on the other side, it can be 35, or you have commercial on both sides.
But we don't set that.
We, as a town, we can't do that, in the town limits, we can't set those?
We can set those for town-owned streets, which are the majority of our newer neighborhoods. Neighborhoods over the last 20 years now. For the Whiteville Park neighborhood, it's, all of the roads in there, or majority of the roads in there, actually all but two, are owned by the state. So we designated them a neighborhood, and so they qualify under our neighborhood, our town-wide neighborhood speed limit, which is 20 miles per hour, and that was set probably over 10 years ago. And again, we can always revisit that and determine if that's too slow in some or the others, but typically we haven't gotten a lot of complaints from other neighborhoods for 20 miles per hour.
If you put 25, they're going to go 30. If you put 105, they're going to do 110.
Well,
That's like Steel Street, you know, where Charlie lives, that's a 20 mile an hour, and there's only houses on one side, or woods on the right side, and that's street's very slow at 20 miles an hour.
I'd like to give you a little bit of information that I ascertained on the day all this happened. Speed limits are set based on data gathered on how many accidents occur in an area. That's how you extrapolate what the speed limit should be. We don't have a great number of accidents that are occurring in Whiteville Park. There's certain areas, I mean, Dobie's Bridge, it's really hard to do the speed limit on Dobie's now that there's not a lot of traffic. School times are different than regular times. We can hire more patrolmen, we can, and have them patrol more frequently. But we can't take the patrolmen and police that we have now off of the jobs that they're doing, because they are very important jobs to track the types of crime that you want to be managed in our community. So with that, if we get recommendation from the staff we have in our police department that I trust, that we need to add additional resources to manage that, this council will take it under advisement. Until then, get your foot off the gas. The one thing I would like to say, we've had a lot of rain. And in particular, the day the Strawberry Festival was canceled, I saw some gully washer rain coming across the bypass. In my neighborhood, literally, we had our trash cans out one morning and we had those heavy rains, and the water was splashing like a big wave. I've got pictures of it, up almost to the top of the cans. Guys, I've never in the recent past felt it so important that you keep the drains clean. When these people are talking about trash blowing onto a school site, look at the flooding around the country. We have to keep those drains clean and we have to do our part. You know, we really need to do that. So please, help folks in your neighborhoods know that's important to all of us. We don't need the flooding that you see everywhere else. We just don't. And trash, I've never seen so much trash in my entire life on the roadsides now, at all.
And they're right, emissions are important, so as much as people can carpool or ride buses to school.
That is true.
Yeah.
That is true.
And my grandchild as well.
With that, anything else? Because I'm ready to go home.
I make that motion.
I'll second
We have a motion for adjournment and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Thank you.